Cleopatra, the seventh Philopator, was the last queen of ancient Egypt, and one of the most fascinating figures in human history. Her name has echoed through the centuries as a symbol of beauty, intelligence, and power. But the real Cleopatra was far more than a legendary seductress. She was a brilliant ruler, a skilled diplomat, and a woman who dared to stand against the might of Rome in a time when few others could. She was born around 69 BCE in the city of Alexandria, one of the most magnificent cities of the ancient world. Alexandria was a center of learning and culture, home to the famous Library of Alexandria and the Great Lighthouse, one of the seven wonders of the world. Cleopatra belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a royal family of Greek origin, descended from Ptolemy I Soter, one of Alexander the Great's generals. When Alexander died, his empire was divided among his commanders, and Ptolemy took control of Egypt. For nearly 3 centuries, his descendants ruled the land of the Nile, but they lived more like Greek monarchs than Egyptian pharaohs. Cleopatra, however, was different. Unlike her ancestors, she embraced the Egyptian language and culture. She was, according to ancient sources, the first of her family to learn the native tongue of her people. She wanted her subjects to see her not as a foreign ruler, but as their rightful queen, even portraying herself as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis, protector of Egypt. From a young age, Cleopatra showed remarkable intelligence and curiosity. She was educated in philosophy, mathematics, literature, astronomy, and medicine. Ancient historians, including Plutarch, noted that she spoke at least 7 or 8 languages, possibly more, and could converse directly with diplomats without the need for interpreters. She was known for her sharp wit, her eloquence, and her charm. Cleopatra ascended to the throne at the age of 18, following the death of her father, Ptolemy XII the Late. According to Egyptian custom, she was forced to rule jointly with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, and as was the dynastic tradition, marry him. But Cleopatra was an ambitious and independent ruler who refused to be controlled by her brother's advisors. Within a few years, a fierce power struggle broke out between the siblings. Political factions formed around each of them, and soon Cleopatra was driven out of Alexandria. Exiled from her own kingdom, she fled to Syria to gather allies and build an army to reclaim her throne. At that very moment, another great figure of history entered her life. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome. Caesar had arrived in Egypt in pursuit of his rival Pompey, who had been assassinated there. The kingdom was unstable, and Cleopatra saw an opportunity to turn her misfortune into advantage. According to one of the most famous legends in ancient history, Cleopatra had herself smuggled into Caesar's palace, rolled inside a carpet. When the carpet was unrolled before the Roman general, out stepped the young queen, confident, intelligent, and utterly captivating. Whether the story is literal or symbolic, it captures the daring and charisma that defined her life. Caesar was impressed not only by Cleopatra's beauty, but by her intellect and political shrewdness. He decided to support her claim to the throne. With his military backing, Cleopatra defeated her brother's forces in the civil war that followed. Ptolemy XIII drowned in the Nile during his retreat, and Cleopatra once again became Queen of Egypt, now as its sole ruler. Her alliance with Caesar was more than political. The two became lovers, and in 47 BCE, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Ptolemy XV, known as Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. Cleopatra proudly declared him the legitimate heir to both Egypt and Rome, a statement that deeply alarmed many Roman politicians. During Caesar's stay in Egypt, the queen sailed with him up the Nile on a luxurious royal barge, showcasing the wealth and grandeur of her kingdom. It was a symbolic journey, merging Roman ambition with Egyptian splendor. Afterward, Cleopatra traveled to Rome, where she stayed in Caesar's villa and was treated as a foreign monarch, and a scandalous one at that. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, Cleopatra's position became uncertain once more. She returned to Egypt, where she continued to rule and strengthen her country's independence amid Rome's growing chaos. After Caesar's death, Rome was plunged into civil war. Two of his successors, Mark Antony and Octavian, later Augustus, divided the Roman world between them. Antony took charge of the eastern provinces, which included Egypt. In 41 BCE, Cleopatra was summoned to meet Antony in the city of Tarsus. Determined to impress him, she staged one of the most famous entrances in history. According to Plutarch, she sailed up the Cydnus River on a magnificent golden barge, dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, surrounded by incense, music, and attendants dressed as cupids. Antony, like Caesar before him, was instantly captivated. Their relationship quickly became both romantic and strategic. Cleopatra needed Roman support to secure her throne and protect Egypt's sovereignty. Antony needed Egypt's wealth to fund his military campaigns. Together, they formed a powerful alliance, one that would soon threaten Rome itself. Cleopatra and Antony had 3 children and ruled together from Alexandria, which became a dazzling center of luxury and culture. They held extravagant banquets, minted coins showing themselves as equals, and presented themselves as divine rulers, Antony as Dionysus, the god of wine, and Cleopatra as Isis. But their love affair outraged many in Rome. Octavian portrayed Cleopatra as a foreign temptress who had bewitched Antony and turned him against his homeland. Roman propaganda painted her as the embodiment of Eastern decadence, manipulative, dangerous, and power-hungry. In truth, she was fighting to preserve Egypt's independence in a world dominated by Roman ambition. By 31 BCE, tensions between Octavian and Antony had reached their breaking point. Their forces clashed in the Battle of Actium, one of the most famous naval battles in history. Despite their combined armies, Antony and Cleopatra were defeated. Their fleets were scattered, and they retreated to Egypt. In the months that followed, their world collapsed. Octavian's legions advanced on Alexandria. Faced with inevitable defeat, Antony received false news that Cleopatra had died. In despair, he took his own life, falling on his sword. When Cleopatra learned of his death, she was overcome with grief. Octavian entered Alexandria in triumph, but he wanted Cleopatra alive, not to honor her, but to parade her through Rome as a captive trophy in his victory procession. The proud queen refused such humiliation. According to legend, she arranged her own death. On August 12, 30 BCE, Cleopatra took her final meal, dressed in her royal robes, and allowed herself to be bitten by an asp, a cobra, the sacred symbol of divine royalty in Egypt. Some historians believe she used poison instead, but the image of the queen dying from the bite of the serpent became eternal. With her death, Egypt fell under Roman control, and Caesarion was executed soon after. Thus ended not only the Ptolemaic dynasty, but the very era of the pharaohs. More than 3,000 years of Egyptian monarchy came to a close. Over the centuries, countless myths have surrounded Cleopatra. Ancient Roman writers, especially those loyal to Octavian, deliberately tarnished her reputation, describing her as a scheming seductress who brought men and empires to ruin. But later historians, reading between the lines, discovered a far more complex woman. Cleopatra was not the irresistible beauty that Hollywood imagines. Ancient coins and sculptures show a woman with strong features, not conventionally beautiful by modern standards, but striking, expressive, and full of personality. Her true power lay in her charisma, intelligence, and voice. Plutarch wrote that her conversation was like a musical instrument with many strings, able to charm anyone who spoke with her. She was also an able ruler. Cleopatra reformed Egypt's economy, stabilized its currency, and expanded trade with neighboring kingdoms. She oversaw irrigation projects, funded scholarship at the Library of Alexandria, and strengthened the Egyptian navy. She combined the administrative skill of a Greek monarch with the religious legitimacy of a pharaoh. She saw herself as more than just a queen. She was a symbol of unity between Greek and Egyptian culture, between East and West, between the old world of the pharaohs and the new world of Rome. Cleopatra died at 39, but her legend has never faded. Poets, playwrights, and artists across centuries have been captivated by her story. Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, written more than 1600 years after her death, transformed her into a timeless icon of love and tragedy. Painters of the Renaissance and filmmakers of the 20th century turned her into the embodiment of exotic power and beauty. But beyond myth and art, Cleopatra remains one of history's most remarkable women. She lived at the crossroads of civilizations and fought, with intelligence, courage, and political mastery, to protect her kingdom in a world dominated by men and empires. She was a ruler who used every tool at her disposal: diplomacy, language, wealth, and even romance, to ensure her nation's survival. Though she ultimately lost her kingdom, she won immortality. More than 2,000 years later, her name still stands as a symbol of strength, intellect, and independence. A reminder that true power is not merely in armies or empires, but in the will and mind of a single extraordinary person. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, did not simply live in history. She became history itself.